We live in interesting time, my friends, because apparently there is a leak for the new Horus Heresy version, Age of Darkness Saturnine, and this was found on, I guess, the Facebook marketplace. Of course, like always, take it with a grain of salt. Mountains of salt, seas of salt, whatever. Because this box apparently is for the 3rd edition, and it makes sense that a new edition of the Horus Heresy would come, especially thanks to Games Workshop doing the Horus Heresy, you know? But this is quite interesting if true. As you might see on screen, the box comes with some units, of course, as always, a new model of Dreadnought, Saturnine Dreadnought, a Saturnine Praetor, Saturnine Terminators, and something that's very interesting. Mark II Tactical Marines and whatever. Mark II. Now you have to understand, from the lore perspective, Mark II and Saturnine armor are old. We're talking about before the heresy. So before the heresy, these things existed. So it might be interesting to see that Games Workshop is going back, chronologically speaking, for the Horus Heresy. And what's interesting is that the Horus Heresy suffers from a huge problem. Their main factions are the Sons of Horus and the Imperial Fists. These are the things you'll always see on the boxes, and they're like the poster faction for this, much in the same way the Ultramarines are the poster faction for 40k. But this time around, they switched it up a little, and it seems that this box has images of, well, salamanders and iron warriors. Which is pretty good, and it's not only good because people might be Salamander fans or Iron Warrior fans, but it's because this time around both factions are doable. To an extent, of course, when it comes to painting. Because, of course, the Salamanders are green and, you know, the Sons of Horus are also green. So that makes it not the hardest thing to paint ever. But the Imperial Fists, on the other hand, oh boy, those suck. Painting yellow sucks. And there are many ways to do it so you can get proper yellow, and I've seen people do it. It still sucks. Now, I say partially because the Iron Warriors, of course, have those stripe things, which is an annoyance, really. It's very annoying to do. And it also has yellow in it, so nobody's safe from yellow, it seems. But nevertheless, it's still easier than the Imperial Fists, in my opinion. The box also seems to have like a Mark II Praetor. It seems to come with all the usual stuff that you would get in the Age of Darkness box. You know, the whole thing with the ruler, dice, decals, of course, and the measurement things. You know, the things for blast radiuses and flamers and stuff like that, which, you know, it's finally interesting that you get that here. A quick glance, though, at this thing will show that there are Terminators in groups of 3, which means it's no longer the 10. Yeah, it was 10 like Cataphracti or Praetor, and it's now just groups of 3. There also seems to be, I guess, a turret on the Iron Warrior side, which is interesting. It surely changes things up from the usual tanks and stuff. And also, the Dreadnought looks interesting, I would say. There's a bunch of focus on plasma. The Dreadnought has a plasma weapon. It also seems some Terminators have plasma weapons. Of course, you would expect flamers from Salamanders, but whatever. I am, of course, skeptical of this, but many Games Workshop leaks have proven to be true. So if that is the case, this is an interesting box to get when it comes to the Horus Heresy. Of course, I'm gonna try and save up and not sell my kidneys to get it, but you know, that's a different story. If true, that is. And I think it remains to be seen. What really makes me skeptical of this, though, is the Mark II name on the Iron Warriors. But there is something about that. You see, in the normal Age of Darkness box, and the original one, the 2nd edition if you want, there is this head for one of the tank gunners, for the tank gunner. You can put on the Spartan or whatever. And he seems to have, well, a head that resembles the Mark II armor, which might be interesting or it might not be related at all. But this is what, in a way, kind of like solidifies it for me. On the other hand, it's It is really broken by the idea they have Saturnine and Mark II armor, which I don't think Games Workshop would go back in the past for that, especially since if you think about it well enough, we're lacking Mark IV, and Mark IV is a very important mark of armor. Of course, if we don't take into consideration Games Workshop's stupid retcon of going like, oh no, they always had access to Mark VI. Whatever, that's my own issue. So we don't have Mark IV, and I would have expected Mark IV to come, you know, before a new edition of the Horus Heresy, or to be the first thing that appears for this. But it seems that's not true if the leak is, well, correct. Again, Seas of Salt, Mountains of Salt, just be skeptical of things. Nevertheless, if you reached it this far, and you probably should because it's only like 6 minutes, please like, comment, and subscribe because it helps the channel grow. Thank you.